morning and welcome to our first installment of what you're going to hear about in a little bit is a series of leadership conversations. My name is Becky Rupert McMahon and I'm the Chief Executive at the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association. We are delighted to have this morning one of our bar favorites on the subject of leadership, Dr. Diane McNally. Good morning, Diane.
Good morning, Becky.
Thank you for joining us and for your willingness to partner with us again. Some of you may remember Diane. She's been a speaker and a participant in our Leadership Academy that we have, which is an annual 10-month program at the Bar Association that helps develop both emerging leaders and then also further reinforce established leaders. And Diane has been a regular on that circuit. She's also joined us for a number of other conversations, all centered around leadership. Leadership is a challenging opportunity and also a daunting task, depending upon the circumstances that you're dealt. And there's no question the last 45 days, and it's impossible to believe it's just been 45 days, all leaders in all roles have been incredibly challenged. So we wanted to go to our favorite, Diane, to help us think about how we take care of our leaders. Leaders often are spending so much time worrying about their business, worrying about their employees, their boards, all those who are around them, but they don't always do a good job stopping to take care of themselves. And that's what the next 30 minutes is about, taking a breath to think about yourself as a leader and how you can recharge your own leadership mojo as we go forward. So Diane joins us. She is the founder of the Diane McNally Consulting firm, which she founded more than a decade ago. She is an unbelievable expert in the realm of human resources and all kinds of leadership coaching engagement opportunities. Diane has held a variety of executive level positions before she founded her own consulting business, including focusing on recruiting, employee relations, organization effectiveness, diversity, HR compliance, and most of all, my favorite, executive coaching. So she brings an incredible amount of professional experience to the table, but she also distinguishes herself because she has studied the art of leadership and organizations for years. In addition to having a master's in psychology and organization systems, Dr. Diane McNally also has a PhD in human and organization development. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Diane to take us through how to reboot your leadership mojo. Thanks, Diane.
Thank you, Becky. It's nice to be with all of you this morning, and I want to thank the Bar Association for including me in this dialogue series. I also want to do a little shout out to my colleague, Chris. Chris is a longtime client of mine, and he inspired the topic that we're talking about this morning. Chris is a leader of an organization in the hospitality industry. He has about 80 employees on his team. And he called me a couple of weeks ago to check in and just say hello. And he said how exhausted he felt. And this really kind of surprised me and it concerned me because this is an individual who I think they designed the Energizer Bunny around. He is nonstop. He's also a multi-time triathlete and he is, just energy personified. So when Chris told me that he was exhausted and he just didn't know how he was going to push ahead after all he'd been through and his team had been through, we got to talking about how we as leaders need to address that. So I want to thank Chris and give him a little shout out for his inspiration. But I think it's important for us to really take a time out this morning just for a few minutes and look back on the events of the last 45 days. As Becky said, it's hard to believe that it's only been 45 days. But if you look at this slide here, just since the middle of March, we have really faced things we've never really faced before. This whole idea of social distancing, businesses closing right and left, industries being hit hard by all kinds of disruption with their customers and employees and suppliers. People working from home for the first time. There are a lot of people who have never done it before. And some people thought at first it might be really great, but I think as time's worn on, we're seeing more and more fatigue around this. And arranging for people to be at home has really pressed the leaders' creativity, and it's been very stressful because there's a lot involved in that. We've had to figure out how to deal with relief packages from that the legislation has granted over the last number of days, and really sifting through that and seeing how that affects not only our own businesses, but our clients' businesses as well. And certainly with the daily numbers around unemployment, the rising number of people being laid off or being furloughed, these are all experiences that have come at us at a very high rate of speed. And now you layer in your own personal changes and events over the last 45 days. Maybe you've had to make some unusual family arrangements with children working from home or caring for an elder parent. Your own personal work situation. Working from home, has its joys and challenges. The thing with working at home often is the work is always there and it never goes away. So that can create some unusual stresses that we haven't dealt with before. And certainly thinking about your own health and how you are staying well and avoiding not just the COVID-19, but also other kinds of illnesses or health-related issues. So this is a very complex and an incredibly stressful time. And certainly we're doing all of this in very, very unusual conditions. So as you see on the next slide, we're going to put in that exhaustion is taking over. I think, and we have so many things to handle. It's very hard for us to manage all of this. If you look at the 360-degree view of all the things we have to handle, whether those are customers, employees, shareholders, whoever it might be, it is no wonder that we are just exhausted. So it seems to me these days that the E in leadership stands for exhaustion. I wanted to share some of what I think are really the hazards of exhaustion. These things might seem very obvious to you, but I want us to really take a check and look at the list of really some of the signs that exhaustion is really creeping in. We often find it very hard to focus and make good decisions. I think all of us may have had this happen when we are really tired and stressed. Emotions run high when we don't have the coping skills or the energy to cope with difficulties. We may become impatient or moody, may become tearful. We may have feelings of illness or just overall malaise. We just don't have the energy to pick up and move on. We feel like some of our relationships may be becoming difficult or disrupted when they really haven't been in the past. And it's an unusual and very stressful situation. I showed this slide to a friend of mine and she told me that she thought she could check every single box on this slide. But I offer these to you just to do a little reality check for yourself. As you look at some of these signs of exhaustion, you can see that the emotions running high, changes in your sleep habits, health issues, and so forth can really, really be stressful. And I think it's important for us to pay attention to some of these signs of fatigue. So I'd like you just to take a minute and take a look and see if any of these relate to you or your particular circumstances. As we think about leadership, I want to offer a couple of concepts for you to think about. We know that two very key leadership capabilities are resilience and self-regulation. Great leaders are great at doing both of these things. And I offer these to you to think about how you're doing on both of these capabilities. And really, resilience speaks to our ability to bounce back, our ability to recover from difficulties, to kind of pick ourselves up and carry on. Self-regulation, and you may have heard about this before in the context of emotional intelligence. This is really our ability as leaders to regulate our emotions, be aware of our emotions, and being able to check ourselves when emotions are running high, or when we're thinking or behaving in ways that may not be as productive as they should be. So these are two key capabilities I would like to focus on as we think about rebooting our leadership mojo. So let's take a look at some ways to do that. One of the key ways I like to think about, and we were just talking about this before we came live here, are intentional connections. And what we mean by this is really to find a few trusted people that you'd like to reconnect with, either on a regular basis or over the next, couple of months. I did this for myself over the weekend, last weekend. I called 4 people who I hadn't really been in touch with as much as I would have liked. And I spent time on the phone just talking about, just catching up and getting current with what was going on with them. It was just incredibly re-energizing to do that. It was, not only was it fun, but it also helped me remember, this circle of support that's out there. So, but you have to be really intentional sometimes in the whole press of business and all that we're taking care of and doing. We have to be a little bit more intentional about checking in with people. I have a client who has a very large family, and he's doing virtual happy hours with his family, which seems to be something that's really working out, for him, because it's time where he can intentionally be with his family, and also be able to plan the time a little bit better. So he's able to really feel in control of it. Identifying mission critical activities over the next 30, 60, 90 days. This is a way to organize what's important, what's not important, or what can wait or be deferred or canceled. And making a plan and really working that plan is important. I also encourage you to embrace your limitations. And by this, I mean really thinking about, what you do well, and maybe what some of the things you need to work on or develop, or maybe you're just not really good at it. Some people, for example, are morning people. And for those people, I urge them to spend, the things that are mission critical, and spend your time on important things in the morning, and maybe allow yourself a chance to downshift a little bit in the afternoon and take care of more task-oriented things. So it's really understanding and taking a step back and saying, how do I want to use my energy to the best of my ability and to the best purpose. Scheduling downtime, very important to actually schedule it. I have been working in a home office setting for a number of years, and I learned that scheduling that time was really important. For example, I would walk my dog at 3 o'clock in the afternoon just to take a break. Well, of late, my dog won't go with me anymore because he's sick of taking so many walks, but nonetheless, we try to schedule downtime just to make sure that it actually happens. And again, taking that time out. Okay, I'd like to share with you some what I call MOJO restoration tools. The first one, and these are things you can take away today and start doing right away. The first is a daily energy audit. And what I mean by that is to really look at where your energy is going. So first, write down everything that's on your mind, absolutely everything. And go through a prioritization exercise, with A being the stuff only you can do. You're the only one who can actually handle it. Or B, there's stuff that others can do with maybe a little help from you, or there's stuff other people can do on their own. And be very, very rigorous about allowing that delegation to happen. One of the hazards of leadership under stress is that we think we have to do everything ourselves, and we simply don't. So we have to really challenge ourselves to delegate or over-delegate. Think of these stressful times as a time for your teams to develop, kind of stretch and show their stuff and try new things. It feels a little risky, but it's amazing how people rise to the occasion. And I think if we all look back on our careers as leaders, we would say that maybe some of our best performance happened under stress, and when we really had to stretch or were asked to go above and beyond the call of duty. So allow your teams to have that same opportunity. And then D is the stuff you just don't need to do. We have to be very honest with ourselves, very clear with ourselves. There are things on that list that we just don't have to do. Or we can defer to some other time and worry about them another time. So after you go through that prioritization, pick 2 or 3 things, limit it, 2 or 3 things that you will do and where you're going to spend your energy. Maybe that's communicating with your team more frequently or more rigorously. Maybe it is, engaging in some professional development that you feel you need to address. Or maybe it's bringing your leadership team together to do some kind of team building, or reaching out to your customers or suppliers or shareholders, whatever it might be. Delegate the rest, defer it, or just cancel it altogether. So this is a way for you to really look at what you're doing and deciding where you're going to put your energy. And hold yourself accountable. Review this every single day and hold others accountable as well. A tip I have, and you may be familiar with this technique, it comes out of the Agile software development framework. They're called huddle meetings. And this is where you bring a team together, bring people together, sometimes on a daily basis. You may not need to do that regularly, but it's a time for you to just quickly come together, no more than 15 minutes, to talk about what you're working on, what you might be stuck on, and where you might need help. And it's a way to quickly hold yourselves accountable and move the work along. And it's a great way to manage energy. I think one of the things that is most stressful in this time are the number of meetings that we have. As humans, we tend to flock together under stress. And so we like to be together, and we don't always need to be together. And it can be stressful to have meeting after meeting after meeting. I did an energy audit with a client not too long ago, and it was no wonder he was exhausted and stressed out because he had a back-to-back meetings for 3 days straight. And he told me he just rests on Mondays and Fridays. And I said, well, then in the middle of the week, you're on the battlefield nonstop. It's no wonder that you're exhausted. So it's really a way to look at, where your energy's going and how you're using your time. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a visualization exercise, but I have had clients actually do this, physically do this. It's called Inside the Box. Imagine an empty box, if you will. I want you to put all of your concerns in that box, everything you're thinking about. You may want to borrow from the previous exercise, dump all that stuff in this imaginary box. I want you to visualize putting the box somewhere away from you for a specific period of time. Perhaps I'll put the box in the hallway overnight. Now realize you can go and visit this imaginary box anytime you want to. If you're worried about it or you want to look at it, you can go look at it. You can't take the stuff out, but just to know it's there with everything that's concerning you is in that box, so it's safe. So now you can rest your mind and your body while your concerns are safely stored in that box for this period of time. This will release so much stress. And it sounds silly and people laugh and roll their eyes, but I challenge you to try this and challenge others to do it as well. It takes a little bit of practice, but over 2 or 3 times, you will be amazed at how much of your stress will just end up in that imaginary box. Now you can go back and unpack that box, but I'd like you to think about unpacking only those things that are worry-worthy, that really you have to worry about, and then leave the rest in the box. You can always go back and pick them out, those other things, but for now leave them in there and only focus on the things that are really worry-worthy. This has really proven to be an incredibly successful tool for stress management, for prioritization, for many of the clients that I work with. So I hope it works for you as well. Now, what I'd like also as we wrap up today is for you to really think about the commitments you want to make to yourself. I'll bet every single day you're making commitments to other people, dozens of commitments. So today is the day for you to make commitments to yourself. So thinking about after the session today, what are you going to commit to? And then revisit those commitments on a frequent basis. Maybe share them with a trusted colleague who can help you stay on track, give you feedback and support. We think about re-energizing ourselves. We can replace our exhaustion and replace that E with energized in leadership. I hope some of these techniques have been helpful to you. I want to again thank you for your time. And before we go to the question and comment period, I want to leave you with a thought. I travel a great deal, and I have to admit I don't really listen all the time when the flight attendants are giving instructions before the flight. But a while back, it occurred to me that when the flight attendant gives us instructions and tells us in the unlikely event of an emergency, the air masks will drop down from the ceiling, and they instruct you very specifically to, if you're traveling with someone who needs assistance, put your mask on first and then help the other person. And I think that's a really important thing to think about, because if we help ourselves first, we'll be available and be energized and able to help others. So I just like to keep that in mind as we are thinking about how we re-energize ourselves as leaders. Handle yourselves with care because you matter, and it's important to invest in yourself. So with that, I'd again like to thank you for your time today, and I'll turn the program back to Becky for questions and comments.
Thank you for your comments. Let me remind folks, we are taking questions. I've gotten a couple. If you're joining us on Zoom, you can use the Q&A feature to submit your question. We know that we've got several who are following us on Facebook Live. You can submit your questions that way. Or if you want to privately email me, we welcome your questions that way to rmcmahon@clemetrobar.org. So Diane, the first question that I got was from somebody who wants to go back to that concept of delegating. That some folks really have a tough time figuring out what and how to give away work to others. And you talked about that being an important part of this assessment of what you can prioritize, what really has to be done by you, and what could be done by others. Can you give some additional pointers for how to figure out what to delegate?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the hardest thing to do as a leader, frankly. A couple things to think about in terms of delegation is risk is one of them. If you delegate this, what's the worst that's going to happen? Now, the high risk things that would really be costly if not done well, you clearly have to keep those for yourself or share it with others who can help you with the work. I like to think of delegation as development, that giving someone an opportunity to really show what they can do, to bring their capabilities to the table. It's a terrific opportunity to do that. It does cause us a little angst, a little, concern as leaders. You have to monitor and be available as a resource, but it's a terrific opportunity to develop your teams. And that's really what we're in the business to do as leaders is, bring people together and help them be the best they can be for adding value to the organization.
We got another question about the concept of these huddle meetings. And I love that idea of a huddle. Particularly at this time where we're practicing social distancing. So the image of that, I think, is terrific. Do you have some tips for how to really keep your huddles short?
Absolutely. When a huddle becomes the entire game, it's very frustrating to people. We've done a lot of things. One, I think can be fun and kind of humorous, is to have to trade the facilitation of it among your team. Like a different person facilitates the huddle each time. And one of the requirements, they have to bring a buzzer or some way, a noise maker of some kind to keep the time to 15 minutes. What am I working on? What do I need help with? What am I stuck on? Those are typically the three things you cover.
Terrific, thank you. So we got another question from somebody who is feeling that even though she was busy before the COVID crisis hit and had a tough time working her way through her inbox on her email, that now that everyone is in this virtual environment, emails seem to have quadrupled and then some. As you think about how to prioritize what are the essentials that have to get done and what the non-essentials, do you have some suggestions, Diane, about either practical tools or ways that somebody can work their way through the ever-burgeoning email inbox?
That's a great one. I can really relate to this as well. I schedule time to do during the day. I don't look at email all day long. A lot of people do that. Sometimes you have to be on the lookout for certain, urgent things, but I schedule time twice in the morning, twice in the afternoon, twice in the evening. I also ask my colleagues to prioritize their emails, like in the subject line. Is this something can wait? Can we talk about it later? Is it urgent? trying to engage others and do the same for them. Is it information sharing? Is it action required? That helps sort through. You can actually, do those kinds of sorting, use those sorting mechanisms in your email. And sometimes you just have to go through and put things in folders to review later. I just like to organize and sort as best I can, and then really follow up on the urgent matters and prioritize, customers first, or, is it employees first? It should be both, I guess. But, try to prioritize how you're going to handle all those communications. But I really urge you to try scheduling time to do email.
Great suggestions. We've got a viewer who is, like me, excited about this concept of a huddle. And so there was an ask about us repeating what those best recommendations are and how to do a huddle. We'll post those on Facebook after today's program. And by the way, I will mention today's program will be available for replay anytime, any place, both on Facebook as well as on the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association's YouTube channel. So Diane, I'd love to go back to sort of this concept, signs of fatigue. They're different for different people. And I was interested in one of the things that you talked about was sort of being in this fog and having a trouble focusing. One of our questions that came in is the person has found that the best way to sort of clear the fog is to literally get up and go outside, walk around the house or walk around the block to clear. Do you have another favorite best trick for how to clear the fog?
Yeah, I like those suggestions as well. I like to just break up and just do something completely different. So I might take a break and do some reading. Again, make a phone call to a friend. Maybe catch up on, some of your social media. Just that break, and physically change where you are. If you're working at home, you get stuck in your home office or your workspace. Physically change where you are. Listening to music. All those kinds of breaks, but really changing your environment. And I can't urge enough to get sleep. I know that's tough to do, but one of the serious hazards of stress is losing sleep or not sleeping well enough or regularly enough, and doing whatever you can to set an environment where you can get the best sleep possible.
So I have to say, so Diane, since we started in this COVID crisis environment, it was at the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association, we closed our physical doors on Friday, March 13th. And in that time, what we have had to do is to take every program, every meeting, every event that we had planned and literally close it down, shut it, and figure out whether it could be postponed later in the year, or could we move it into this virtual environment. And so I am somebody who working from home is not something that I've done regularly. And so as we've been sort of reshuffling what we're doing and how we're doing it, I've used your advice, which is to move around my house. So I every day am in a different position and in a different location, just because it helps me sort of, again, refocus, recenter. The change of scenery helps. For others, I think it's really about being in the same place and having that discipline of a routine that gets them started. We are starting next week. We are giving rise to the Leadership Cafe, which is a series of conversations to create a new morning and a new step towards your bright future. Starting next Friday and every Friday thereafter for 5 weeks, from 8 a.m. to 8:45 a.m., we will be having different conversations centered around this topic of leadership. These conversations are free to all of our CMBA members, so 5,000 plus of you will have access to this for free. And then anyone who's not a member, we would love for you to also join the conversation, and you can do that, a series of 5 dialogues for just $50. And if you're interested in becoming a Bar Association member, we can take that $50 right off of your membership. But the 5 consecutive conversations will be focused on these topics that you see here beginning April 24th, with session number 1, assessing the current state of your organization. And that's a program that Diane is going to lead for us. Diane, can you give us a preview of what we'll cover in that dialogue?
Absolutely. We're going to take a look at tools and methods for looking at what's happening now in your organization at all levels. So then you can start to build what we'll talk about in session 2, which is that roadmap to returning to quote normal. So these are some assessment tools that you'll need as leaders to do a very good and thorough job of knowing what your current state is and being able to move ahead.
Great. And then that'll take us into the third session that Diane is also leading. So she's going to give us the trifecta, 1, 2, and 3, with the third session focusing on how leaders it's critical to integrate both your head and your heart in being a leader. Can you talk a little bit about that, Diane?
Absolutely. This is really looking at the cognitive aspects of leadership as well as the emotional aspects of leadership and how you bring those together to optimize your leadership capabilities. And it's really how to be a head coach and a heart coach as you bring your organizations back online or bring your organizations to the new day.
Terrific. And then our conversation will shift. Jennifer Blaga, who is the Director of Recruitment for McDonald Hopkins, and then is also the founder of Your Purple Crayon, will be leading a session entitled Assessing the Landscape of Your Practice. This is going to be, again, another tool, a practical tool that you can use in assessing where you are in your business in terms of your talent, both you and those who work within your organization, the actual business metrics of your practice, and then looking at your client base and thinking about how you can build a stronger, brighter, more successful future. And then the final session that we'll be offering will be a leadership town hall, where we're going to be asking for your input along the way. What's keeping you awake at night? What are some of your challenges? What are some areas that you would like to see us focus on? And so we'll save that last session as our wild card when we wrap things up towards the end of May. So 5 consecutive sessions. One of the benefits of registering for these sessions, in addition to getting the content and being able to ask your questions, is each of these 5 sessions will be available for replay at any time now into the future for anyone who registers for the program. So we hope that you'll consider joining us for this session. How can you get registered? Well, the next slide will talk you through. There are 3 simple ways to get registered. One is everyone who's participated in this program today through Zoom, where we've got your email address. We will send you an email directly so that you have the right information so that you can get logged in and signed up today. Another option will be to go to our website. In just a few minutes, we will have this posted on our main landing page at our website, clemetrobar.org. And that'll take you to a site where you can register immediately. Or, yes, the phone still works. You don't have to always use technology. You can go back to basics, and you can call us at 216-696-2404. That was one of those quick pivots that we had to make just over a month ago, which was to figure out how to forward all of our respective lines to our individual phones. It's working. So Dominica in our CLE department is eager to take your call if you'd like to register that way. And again, just a quick reminder, these programs, all 5, are entirely free for all of our CMBA members. And if you're interested in becoming a member, we can make that happen for you too. So one way or another, we hope that you'll come back for one or for all of these sessions that we have into the future and beyond. At this time, I'd like to now, just before we hit our appointed hour to wrap things up, I want to offer again a thank you to Diane. Some of you may be interested in reaching back out to Diane directly. When Diane founded her consulting business just over 10 years ago, it was a whole new adventure to sort of get started, to think about after having spent her entire career holding a variety of leadership roles, including with KeyBank for more than 2 decades, I think. This whole entrepreneurial spirit of her has really come to bear in her consulting practice. And so I know she would welcome hearing from you individually. If you'd like to talk with her now before our Leadership Cafe series begins next Friday, you can reach her by phone, you can reach her by email, or you can check out her website where there's lots more information. Diane, thank you again. Any final thoughts for you as we get ready to go into a new weekend and hopefully take some time to re-energize, to start fresh next week?
Just take good care and stay well, everyone. And thank you again for your time. Thank you, Becky.
Thank you, Diane. And thanks again to everyone for joining us for our conversation. We have Beyond Leadership, we have many more programs that are happening both today, next week, and into the following week. So please feel free to come back to our website, that's clemetrobar.org, or keep following us on Facebook, where we'll keep all of the relevant content posted so that you know where you can engage with us next. Thank you again. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.